Southwest Florida is about to change more than it has in the last 20 years. And most people have no idea how this is going to affect home prices, taxes, insurance, and everyday life. In this video, I'm breaking down everything new and coming to Southwest Florida in 2026, whether you already live here or you're thinking about moving here. By the end of this video, you'll understand why big corporations, developers, and local governments are quietly betting very heavily on Southwest Florida and what that should tell you about the next decade. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Rick Harrison. I live here in Southwest Florida. I work in real estate full-time, and I track this stuff not for clicks, but because it directly impacts my clients' decisions and my own. The important thing to understand is this. Projects on this scale don't react to headlines. They react to years of data, and by the time you hear about them, the decision has usually already been made. A billion-dollar airport expansion doesn't get approved because of one good year. In many cases, these projects were being planned 5 to 10 years ago. That's why when people say, all this just started happening, they're only seeing the last step, construction. Large institutions don't invest billions based on optimism. They invest based on risk-adjusted certainty. So the reason all this feels like it's happening at once is because we're finally seeing years of planning materialize at the same time. Which leads to the next question that actually matters. If this was all planned years ago, what exactly are they building and how is it going to affect your daily life? Let's start with the biggest one. And if you're relocating, this is the project that quietly explains why Southwest Florida isn't slowing down. Project number one is RSW Airport expansion. Southwest Florida International Airport is expanding in a big way. And the reason matters because airports don't just expand based on hope. They expand when the numbers force it. RSW is adding major terminal capacity, more gates, more space, more throughput, because the region is essentially outgrowing the old setup. Here's the part most people miss. An airport expansion isn't just about travelers, it's about the entire economy. If you live here, here's what you'll notice first. More traffic around key corridors, especially during season. More jobs and supporting businesses, not just at the airport, but everything around it. More visitor infrastructure means Southwest Florida becomes more capable of handling larger waves of people without choking as badly as it does now. If you're relocating, RSW expansion is a huge signal because it answers a quiet question. Is Southwest Florida still a niche market, or is it becoming a permanent major hub? Now, does this mean home prices automatically skyrocket tomorrow? No, but it does mean something important. It lowers long-term demand risk. In other words, if the region can support more flights, more travelers, and more economic activity, that tends to support higher wage growth over time, more commercial expansion, and stronger long-term housing demand. And I know some people will say, but I keep hearing Florida's market is collapsing. Here's the difference. A market can normalize and still have long-term demand drivers. Airport expansions aren't built for 12 months from now. They're built for 10 to 20 years from now. But if the airport expansion is the big regional signal, the next project is the one locals feel in their bones every single day: traffic. Project 2, the Cape Coral Bridge replacement and what it really means. The Cape Coral Bridge replacement is one of those projects that sounds boring until you realize it can change your commute and even which side of the river people choose to live on. This bridge is a major choke point, and the replacement plan isn't just swap the bridge, it's a full modernization. If you live here, the bridge isn't just infrastructure, it's quality of life. When a region grows, traffic becomes the tax nobody votes on. A replacement or expansion project like this is basically the city admitting this traffic level isn't temporary. Okay, Rick, but will it make traffic worse? In the short term, yes. Construction can be annoying. But here's the longer term reality. If they didn't do this, traffic gets worse anyway, just without the fix. So the question isn't, will this cause disruption? It's, would you rather have disruption with improvement or disruption forever? This is where it gets interesting for property values. And I'll be careful here. Better infrastructure doesn't magically raise all prices evenly, but it does tend to do two things. It increases the livability radius, so people are willing to live farther out when access improves, and it changes demand patterns. Some neighborhoods benefit because commuting becomes more predictable. So relocation buyers shouldn't just compare home prices. You should compare the full cost of living, including commute and time. Now, if the bridge is about daily life, the next project is about something deeper: identity. Project 3, the Cape Coral Yacht Club redevelopment. Why it's a bigger deal than a park. The Yacht Club redevelopment isn't just a facelift. It's one of those projects that signals how the city wants to position itself for the next decade. And instead of rebuilding the same thing, the city is turning it into a full waterfront destination. Rebuilt community center, redesigned marina and docks, new pool and amenities, major parking changes, and updated shoreline seawall work. If you're local, you're probably thinking one of two things. This is gonna be amazing, finally. Or, how much is this gonna cost us? And both are fair. Big public redevelopments typically get funded through a mix of city capital budgets, grants and bonds, and tourism or user-based revenue tied to the facility itself. The important takeaway isn't just it's expensive, it's what the city believes the return will be. Cities don't spend at that scale unless they believe usage demand is coming back stronger and the area can support it economically. For homeowners nearby, this type of redevelopment tends to do something specific. It increases the desirability premium. People pay more to live near updated waterfront amenities, walkable recreation, and destinations that make the place feel finished, not underdeveloped. For relocation buyers, this project helps answer, is Cape Coral just a big grid of houses, or is it becoming a lifestyle city with real anchors? When you see a city invest heavily in destinations like this, it's a signal of long-term positioning. Now, those 3 projects alone already point to something big, but the next group of projects tells us something just as important: how private money thinks about the future. Project 4, the Cape Coral Grove, New Town Center. One of the biggest quiet changes coming to Cape Coral is something the city has never really had before: a true town center. Cape Coral Grove is a massive mixed-use development. Apartments, retail, entertainment, hotels, public spaces, all intentionally clustered together. Think less strip malls and more destination hub. It's designed for people to spend time there. If you live in Cape Coral, this answers a long-standing frustration. Why do we have to leave the city for everything? A town center does a few important things. It keeps spending local, creates jobs that aren't just service-based, and gives the city an actual gravity point. Cities without centers tend to feel temporary, whereas cities with centers feel more permanent. Here's the part people get wrong. A town center doesn't raise prices everywhere. What it does is reshape demand. Areas near the hub often gain stronger rental demand, better resale liquidity, and more consistent buyer interest. If you're relocating, this project answers a subtle question. Is this place a people just sleep or a place people actually live? Town centers attract younger professionals, families who want convenience, and long-term residents, not just seasonal ones. So Cape Coral Grove isn't just a development. It's a signal that the city is maturing. But town centers only work if people actually live nearby. Which brings us to the next project and the biggest misunderstanding in today's housing conversation. Project 5, the Kingston and Master Plan Communities. So let's talk about Kingston because it helps separate fear from facts. Kingston isn't a subdivision. It's essentially a new town. Thousands of homes, schools, retail, recreation, and internal infrastructure. Projects like this take decades, not years, to fully absorb. A lot of people are asking, doesn't building this many homes crash prices? The short answer is not automatically. The long answer, only if demand disappears. So here's what gets missed. Florida didn't just grow during COVID, it shifted its baseline population upward. Kingston isn't being built for 2026 buyers. It's being built for 2030, 2035, and beyond. So Kingston isn't a gamble on hype, it's a long-term bet on sustained migration. And when thousands of new residents are planned, the next question becomes unavoidable: healthcare. Project 6, new hospital, campuses, and medical expansion. Healthcare expansion is one of the strongest long-term signals that a region can send, because hospitals don't expand for tourists. Southwest Florida is seeing major investment in new hospitals, expanded medical campuses, and specialty care facilities. These aren't cosmetic upgrades, they're capacity projects. Expanding healthcare is an admission that the population isn't going back down. If you're relocating, especially with a family or planning long-term, this answers an emotional question too. Can this place actually support us long-term? Healthcare expansion says yes. So when you step back and look at these private projects together, town centers, master plan communities, healthcare expansion, a pattern emerges. All this assumes one thing, that the housing market can support it. And that's where the conversation online completely breaks down. So next we need to talk about the housing data and why Florida isn't crashing, it's normalizing. If you've been on YouTube, social media, or the news lately, you've probably heard things like, Florida's market is collapsing, prices are crashing, nobody can afford to live here anymore. So let's slow this down and actually look at what the data says. Because here's the truth, people aren't crazy for feeling nervous. Housing is the biggest financial decision most people ever make, and when you're being hit with negative headlines every day, it's easy to assume something must be wrong. But fear spreads faster than context. The biggest mistake people are making right now is looking at the wrong time frame. Most headlines today compare today's market to the absolute peak of 2021 and 2022. And if you do that, almost any market looks bad. What happened during COVID wasn't normal appreciation. It was an emergency level demand spike. If you look at a 10 to 15 year price chart, something becomes very clear. You'll see a steady, boring baseline before 2020, a sharp spike during 2020 to 2022, and then a return toward the trend line. That's not a crash, that's normalization. Another headline you'll hear is inventory is up, That's bad. But rising inventory after an artificial shortage is exactly what should happen. It means buyers have options again, sellers have to price realistically, and negotiations exist. That's what a functioning market looks like. Now, does this mean housing is cheap? No. Affordability is still stretched, mostly because of interest rates and insurance, not because prices are spiraling. That's an important distinction. High monthly payments don't automatically mean a collapsing market. A bad market makes headlines. A normal market builds wealth quietly. In practical terms, this market looks like slower appreciation, fewer bidding wars, more price discovery, and better decision making. That's not bad for buyers or sellers. It's just uncomfortable after chaos. If you're a local homeowner, this is important. Your home didn't lose value because Florida failed. It lost speculative excess, and those are very different things. If you're relocating, this matters too. Waiting for a dramatic crash that takes prices below pre-COVID levels assumes demand disappears, and the projects we just walked through suggest the opposite. So when you hear that Florida's housing market is struggling, what's really happening is this. The market is no longer distorted by emergency level demand. It's behaving like a market again. And once prices stabilize, the next thing people start paying attention to is something else entirely. What does it actually cost to live here long term? And that's where taxes, insurance, and fees enter the picture, often in ways people don't expect. This is where a lot of people say Florida isn't worth it anymore. Taxes are going up. Insurance is insane. Everything just feels more expensive. And here's the truth. Some of those concerns are valid, but most people don't understand where the costs are actually coming from. Florida doesn't usually get expensive all at once. It gets expensive quietly in pieces. And if you only focus on the home price, you miss the real picture. Let's start with property taxes. Florida doesn't have a state income tax, so local governments rely more heavily on property taxes and usage-based revenue. That part isn't new. What is changing is how fast values move during COVID. If you're a local homeowner, you likely have a homestead exemption and Save Our Homes protection, which means your taxable value probably rose much slower than market value. That's why many locals didn't feel the spike right away. But if you're buying now, your tax bill resets to today's value. And that's where people get surprised. Two neighbors with identical homes can have very different tax bills. So property taxes aren't unpredictable, they're just misunderstood. But taxes are only part of the story. The cost that shocks most people today is insurance, the real affordability pain. Insurance is the single biggest reason housing feels more expensive in Florida right now. And this is where headlines are partly right, but here's the key thing to understand. Insurance costs aren't uniform. They vary massively based on the age of the home, roof type and age, elevation and flood zone, wind mitigation features, and location. Two homes a mile apart can have completely different insurance bills. This is why buying the cheapest house can backfire. A lower price doesn't always mean a lower monthly payment. Sometimes it means higher insurance forever. So insurance isn't killing the market, it's sorting it out. Now layer one more thing on top of taxes and insurance, and that is where many people get blindsided. Fees and invisible costs. Community development districts, or CDDs, are one of the most misunderstood costs in Florida. They're not good or bad, they're just financing tools. Newer communities often use them so the upfront cost doesn't all get baked into the purchase price. The trade-off is lower price today, higher monthly costs for a set number of years. Older communities often flip that. Higher purchase price, lower monthly overhead. This is where relocation buyers get burned. They compare prices online without comparing total cost of ownership. So between taxes, insurance, and CDDs, the monthly numbers matter more than the sticker price. And this is why locals and relocation buyers should not be approaching this market the same way. Because the right move depends entirely on where you're starting from. Which brings us to the next section. Locals versus relocation buyers. Two strategies, one market. By now you can probably feel it. This market isn't broken, but it's definitely not simple either. And here's the mistake most advice makes. It treats everyone the same. A local homeowner and a relocation buyer can look at the same house, the same price, the same payments, and reach completely different conclusions. And both can be right. If you already live here, your biggest challenge is probably, what should I do next? A lot of locals are feeling stuck. You watch prices surge, you watch rates climb, and now you're being told the market is bad. Here's the perspective most people miss. If you already own a home here, you're not starting from zero. You already own a hard asset in a growing region. For locals, the key question isn't, is the market good or bad? It's, does my home still fit my life? Am I protecting my equity? Am I optimizing my long-term costs? In a normalizing market, bad moves get punished more than the no moves. For locals, patience is often a strategy, not indecision. But if you're relocating, patience means something very different. If you're relocating, you're not comparing Florida to last year. You're comparing it to where you're coming from. And this is where advice online completely misses the mark. Because for relocation buyers, you're not anchored to pre-COVID prices. You're anchored to your current cost of living, your current taxes, your current lifestyle. You're not just buying a house. You're trying to avoid making a one-way mistake. So the fear isn't overpaying, it's what if we move and regret it? Waiting for the perfect moment usually backfires because timing markets assumes you control the interest rates, the inventory, and future demand, which you don't. What you can control is preparation. So for you, clarity beats timing. Locals and relocation buyers make different mistakes, but they share one big one. Both groups get stuck reacting to noise. Headlines, social media, hot takes, instead of stepping back and asking, does this move make sense for my life and finances over the next 5 to 10 years? Short-term uncertainty doesn't erase long-term fundamentals. Once you stop trying to win the market, you can start using it. And this is where the final piece comes in. What big money is really signaling about Southwest Florida? Because when you step back and look at everything we've talked about, there's one signal that cuts through all of it. What big institutions are doing with their money. So let's talk about that next. Here's a rule most people don't think about. Big money is slow, conservative, and boring on purpose. That's not a weakness, that's how it survives. What it does mean is this: the people with the most data are planning for a future where Southwest Florida remains relevant, populated, and economically viable. Which brings us to the last question. Given everything we've talked about, what's the smart move for you right now? You're gonna be disappointed because the smartest move isn't the same for everyone. So let's go over who might wanna consider buying, who should sell, and who should wait. Let's start with buying, because for some people, this market actually makes more sense than it did a few years ago. Buying tends to make sense right now if you're planning to stay put for several years and you're buying based on lifestyle and long-term costs, not headlines. This market rewards prepared buyers, not rushed ones. The biggest mistakes buyers make right now is focusing only on price. Monthly costs matter more than ever. Getting this wrong is how people regret a good deal. Buying works when the numbers support your life, not when you're trying to time the market. But what if you already own a home? Selling right now isn't about panic, it's about alignment. Selling can make sense if your home no longer fits your life, especially in a market where overpriced homes sit, but well-priced homes still move. Selling isn't about getting out, it's about making a deliberate move. And for a lot of people, the smartest move isn't buying or selling, when waiting is actually a strategy. Waiting gets a bad reputation, but waiting can be a strategy if it's intentional. The problem isn't waiting, the problem is waiting without a plan. Indefinite waiting usually comes from fear, and fear tends to cost more over time than mistakes made thoughtfully. So waiting works when it's purposeful, not when it's reactive. The biggest mistake people make in markets like this is trying to win the timing. The people who do best long-term are the ones who make boring, well-thought-out decisions and then stick with them. You don't need certainty, you just need clarity. And that's really the point of this entire video. Not to tell you what to do, but to help you think clearly about your options. If you want help thinking this through for your specific situation, my name's Rick Harrison and my contact information is in the description and the pinned comment. Whether you're relocating, already live here, or just want a second set of eyes, I'm happy to point you in the right direction. And if you're planning to move to Southwest Florida, the relocation kit linked below and at the QR code on the screen is a solid place to start. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.